네, 국경없는 의사회 다큐 상영에 누군가의 일상에 와주신 여러분 환영합니다. 저는 국경없는 의사회 커뮤니케이션국에서 근무하고 있는 방지연이라고 합니다. 네, 국제의료구호단체인 국경없는 의사회는 무력 분쟁 지역, 전염병 창궐 지역, 자연재해 지역, 그리고 의료 소외 지역 등 전 세계 인도주의 위기 현장에서 활동하고 있습니다. 2012년 설립된 한국 사무소에서는 모금, 활동가 채용, 그리고 커뮤니케이션 활동을 진행하고 있는데요. 그 중에서도 오늘 행사는 어쩌면 우리 일상과는 좀 멀게 느껴질 수 있는 인도주의 위기 상황을 여러분께 알리고 그곳에서의 국경없는 의사회 활동을 알리기 위해서 준비됐습니다. 특히 오늘은 7년째 이어지고 있는 가장 심각한 인도주의 위기 현장 중 하나인 로힝야 난민 위기를 준비를 했습니다. 먼저 30분 길이 정도 되는 다큐멘터리 먼저 시청 함께 하시고 국경없는 의사회 로힝야 캠프 현장 책임자로 역임하신 아룬 재관님을 모시고 현장 이야기를 들어보도록 하겠습니다. 먼저 다큐멘터리 시청 전에 저희 엠마 캠벨 한국 사무총장님을 무대로 모시고 환영의 말씀을 듣도록 하겠습니다. 환영의 박수 부탁드립니다.
안녕하세요. 저는 엠마 캠벨라고 합니다. 국경없는 의사회 한국 사무총장입니다. 반갑습니다. Welcome to all of you here and online, and thank you for attending this Médecins Sans Frontières documentary screening of Out of Fear. This documentary explores the grave humanitarian crisis that is facing the Rohingya people.
네, 오늘 이번 국경없는 의사회 다큐멘터리 아웃 오브 피어 상영회에 오신 온라인에서도 참석하신 모든 분들 환영합니다. 이 다큐멘터리는 로힝야족이 직면한 심각한 인도주의 위기를 조명합니다.
Currently, around 1 million Rohingya refugees are living in Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh, under extremely challenging conditions. They are deprived of basic healthcare, access to clean water, and safe shelter, living every day in fear and uncertainty. This dire situation requires ongoing attention and action from the international community.
현재 방글라데시 콕스바자르에는 약 100만 명의 로힝야 난민들이 극도로 열악한 환경에서 생활하고 있습니다. 기본적인 의료 서비스, 깨끗한 물, 안전한 피난처를 제공받지 못하고 두려움과 불확실성에서 하루하루를 살아가고 있습니다. 국제사회의 지속적인 관심과 행동이 필요합니다.
This documentary that we'll watch today focuses on a generation of children, teenagers and young adults living in containment amidst daily violence, and we want to hear or will hear their perspectives for their future.
이 다큐멘터리는요, 일상적인 폭력 속에서 또 수용소에서 살아가는 어린이, 청소년, 청년 세대의 삶과 미래를 보실 수가 있는데요. 이들의 목소리로 보실 수 있을 겁니다.
It is based on testimonies of Rohingya youth, highlighting the blatant despair and lack of opportunities that this new generation faces as it grows up.
네, 이 다큐멘터리는요, 로힝야족 청소년의 증언을 바탕으로 제작을 했고요. 이 새로운 세대가 겪고 있는 노골적인 절망 또 희망의 부재에 대해서 이야기하고 있습니다.
The plight of the Rohingya is particularly important to me. That is because this is our crisis. For Koreans, for Australians, a crisis that is happening here in the Asia Pacific.
네, 로힝야족의 곤경은 저희에게도 매우 중요합니다. 바로 우리의 위기이기 때문입니다. 아시아 태평양 지역에서 일어나고 있는 일인데요. 한국인, 호주인의 위기이기도 합니다.
And that's why I'm especially happy to partner with and introduce and welcome Arun Jagan, Humanitarian Affairs Advisor at Médecins Sans Frontières Australia, who has travelled all the way to Korea for this important event. He has a long and proud experience of working in Bangladesh as head of mission for MSF and also passionately advocating on this issue in Australia and internationally.
그래서 오늘 아룬 재간 호주 국경없는 의사회 인도주의적 어드바이저님께서 한국에 오시게 되었는데요. 바로 오늘 이 특별한 행사를 위해서 모셨습니다. 아룬님은 방글라데시에서 국경없는 의사회 미션 책임자로서 오랫동안 일을 하셨고요. 호주와 또 국제사회에서 이 문제를 열정적으로 옹호해 오신 분입니다.
The Rohingya crisis is also a forgotten crisis, with declining funding from the UN, meaning that organizations like MSF are having to expand its response. But we also have limited capacity.
로힝야 위기는 잊혀진 위기가 되어가고 있습니다. 유엔의 자금 지원이 감소되고 있는데요. 따라서 저희와 같은 단체들이 노력을 배가하고 있습니다. 하지만 저희도 역량의 한계가 있습니다.
So thank you once again for joining me and my colleagues to shine a light on this tragic and desperate situation, and for showing a willingness to support and work together towards meaningful outcomes for the Rohingya people. Thank you very much.
네, 그래서 오늘 이 자리에 함께해 주셔서 감사합니다. 저와 또 국경없는 의사회 동료들과 함께 이 비극적이고 또 절망적인 상황을 조명하고 또 로힝야족과 인도주의 커뮤니티 발전을 위해서 마음을 모아주셔서 진심으로 감사드립니다. 다시 한번 감사드립니다.
এখান থেকে এই বেড়াটা পুরি গরুর বেড়াটা পুরি আমার বাসার শুয়ে সিট এইখানে শুয়ার পরে ওই জায়গাতে পড়ছিল দুনিয়ান জ্বলি গিয়ে দুনিয়ান তো খাইয়ে নে
বাদ বাড়তে পাকঘরের মাঝে বাদ বাড়িয়ে নেই বা সারের জন্য বাদ বাজি দিয়ে টাইমের মাঝে এতক্ষণ যখন বেশি গোলাগুলি চলে বাচ্চারা তো ভাড়াই লেগে না তাড়াতাড়ি কি বুঝি ঘরের ভিতর গলাই এনে মাঝের মাঝে সম্ভব যাবা দি এতক্ষণের মাঝে নেড়েকে এতক্ষণের মাঝে বইনের তর্ক বাচ্চাই দিবে ইবে আছে মাঝে নিলা ওলা তো দৌড়িয়া এরা হদ্দে মামি সম্বল বেতন ফুরি যার গই হয়ে নাই আসি রে তখন মাথায় দিন সম্বল আলগাইছে দে টাঁড়িয়া না আগাউড়ার লোক টুলবো আল্লাহ হাঁদে এড়ে কাগাউড়া রক্ত বাসি যার গই অঞ্চলের আরো তাড়াতাড়ি একটা বিজা করে যাবাই দিয়ে অন্যান্য নিভাই বিলি বাদা লাট গলা দিয়ে সাইড আমার বাচ্চা টাইয়ানি দেখলে সিজা কিন্তু এডা তত দিয়ে গোস্ত জরি গিয়ে টাইয়ানো জরি গিয়ে ইয়ানে বেসিরি গিয়ে জিবা ভাই ভালো এরে গিয়ে গই দিব ইতারা একটু সম্বলতি বাস এবার এখনো মরি এবার এখনো গুলি বুঝি দেবো মারি
সাড়ে তো গলি না সাড়ে
তাই উত্তম দেরি এটা অবস্থা তো বেশি গুলি যেত আর বেশি আর নেলি না মারে আর একটু সাথে কি তারা একটু দরজা তো তুই এর একটু সাথে কি ইকারগুম সাথে ইকারগুম হনো ন দেখি আগান নেছে দেবো এতো না মাঝে ফাইনিন দো ফুটো মারে তার মাহাসান মরে গিয়ে হয়ে কিসে বাবর হইতে কিসে আর বামাতাকে হইতে মেটালাম মারার মাঝে মাথা হাঁটে উঠে উড়িয়ে উদ্যান উড়িয়ে পোয়ালই হাঁড়াই পোয়ালই দু মাঝে এড়ে মানে বেলাক বেশি গিয়ে হতো পোয়া বাফালইরে
দেশত থাকি তো ডরিয়া নাছিল হন কেম্বর হালতো ডরর জিন্দগি লইনে জীবন হারাই দেরি আর বাংলাদেশত আসি 2017 মাঝে আর যত গড়বাড়ি ফুরা দি ফেলার আর তখন খুশি আসছি দিন গড়বাড়ি যত ফুরা দি ফেলাই গরু চল যত হারিলে ফেলাইয়ে তো ফুয়ানচান যত তো অন্য মাঝে ফুরা দি ফেলের আর মায়া ভঞ্জরে যত র্যাপ গড়ের তো ইয়ান সহ্য করি না পারিয়ে না আর বাংলাদেশের মাঝে আসছিলাম আমরা এখন মনে করো আমরা আসছি দিয়ে আজিয়া 6 বছর পারে গিয়ে ইনলারি হস্টেরি ভাই এটা এখন এত বড় সুবিধা নয় একজনের উপর একজন টাকা পরে তো এটা হন সুন্দর করে হন থাকি ফারিত দেন হষ্টবিষ্ট করে হন্ডল্লা দুং মেহনত করে রাত দিন হারাই দিয়ে বর্মার তো আগে গিয়ে ডর এখন আর তো ক্যাম্পতে গিয়ে তো ক্যাম্পর মাঝেও ডর জিন্দিগি করি দে হন খুশি আসি জিন্দিগি নাই ফেরেশানি লিয়ে চলিত দিয়ে ফুয়ালা ফুটাইলেও এত সঙ্গে না ডর লইয়ে না ফুয়াই গুজরি উড়িয়ে না বাড়াই দেওয়া তো আধা করে ধরি বাদি তিন থামি গেলে তো ফুয়ারে হন্ডল্লা নিচে আসি নয় তো হয়ে না দিলা করি না নিচে আসি লইয়ে না গুনিয়ে দেরি ডরে দিবা রাতিয়া ফোনা যা এনতে এড়ে নমার অন্য অন্য জায়গার মাঝে এড়ে আর বল কিবা মাঝে নর দেরি
When you talk with Rohingya refugees now, almost all of them say that their number one concern in the camps is violence, is the security situation. Armed groups and criminal gangs have become rampant in the camps, and the level of violence there is getting worse all the time. Rohingya are being killed, sexually assaulted, kidnapped, tortured. They describe living in an environment of pervasive fear. Kids will say that they're too scared to go to school. Some refugees will say they're too scared to even use the latrines. The level of violence varies camp by camp, but its impact is felt everywhere and by really everyone who you talk to.
Around 1 million Rohingya people are currently living in Bangladesh, most of them living in a network of camps located south of the city of Cox's Bazar. Altogether, these camps make up for the largest refugee camp in the world. Since 1978 and the military operation Dragon King, Rohingya people have been entrapped in a cycle of campaigns of violence in Myanmar, of displacement to Bangladesh to flee this violence, and of repatriation to Myanmar. In 1982, Myanmar passed the Citizenship Act, which basically deprived Rohingya of their citizenship and essentially made them stateless people. In 2017, following a campaign of extreme violence in Myanmar, Rohingya people sought refuge in Bangladesh in the district of Cox's Bazar.
We've seen over the past year or two Bangladesh authorities really ramping up restrictions on the Rohingya refugees, on their ability to work, to study, to move freely. Authorities have closed community-led schools. They've shut down and in some cases demolished shops and markets. They've imposed new restrictions for traveling just within the camps at checkpoints for refugees who are trying to get from camp to camp, not even to leave the camp entirely. Rohingya are not allowed to leave the camps to work. They have extremely limited opportunities to work within the camps. So the armed groups and criminal gangs have been able to take root because it provides an opportunity to work and make money, essentially. They're operating and funding themselves through these illicit economies, drug smuggling, human trafficking, extortion. These groups are primarily recruiting young men, sometimes even boys, and they go to them and they tell them, we can give you money, we can give you guns, we can give you power. And those promises really hold appeal for people who feel like they have no other options, for people who are struggling to survive.
We've been receiving in our hospitals an increased number of patients with violence-related wounds, including children, hit by stray bullets. In such a context, there are limited solutions for Rohingya people. Some try to leave Bangladesh and to take the sea to reach Malaysia or other regional countries. Others are considering that it's no longer possible to remain in Rohingya camps and are trying to head back to Myanmar.
Okay na, sana ya, sana ya, sana de sana, tal de sana, tal na do sana, tal de sana.
Peki muhtar ke Muhammad'e zaten ne oldu? Yaraga ber, Melisa'da bala giyilen bu oldu. Mani nijatan görür maya panduru öyle zargıtı ma babanın huyran humani giyiyor. Zayara da Melisa giyiyor, Melisa çar hat dori dori ara utten oldu ka. Mani kuruna bar söyledi anla buli. Datman ne oldu? Barmare dani beg di balay budhar kan di başa di balay anam. Başa datman da diye ara maniş hodum mori giyiyor. Hayna fari lönüm hader başa takıyorum. Barmari kay utten oldu, kay utten oldu. Hinteng gote gote 3-4 দিন মূলক ভাষা থেকে বুটলা দিবে আসিবে গিয়ে দিও রানা মাদি
গরম মানে আর চিন্তা ভাবনা গজি জ্বর বা ধোয়ানা ভাতে না ভাতে তো আবার খবর পাই তার আরে মানে বুড়ো তো তুললে বয়সাতে সব মরে যার বুড়ো মারে বাসা দিতে এলে খবর পায় অন্য মানুষ এবার দেখা না হয় তাঁরই বউ মরে গিয়ে তো ভালো হবে আর চিন্তা করি গরম মারে তাই টান দেরি
এর জনের পরে বাংলাদেশের হারে দড়ি ফেরাই দড়ি হরে খাদ্য দিয়ে বাসিনশোর মধ্যে 1.5 মাইল মূলা জল দিয়ে আমার মা বাপরে রাইত নদী
Basan Char is this remote flood-prone island in the middle of the Bay of Bengal, which Bangladesh authorities have attempted to build up into a site to house Rohingya refugees. They started moving Rohingya to the island in December 2020. So far, about 30,000 Rohingya have been moved. Many of them want to return to the camps on the mainland and haven't been allowed to. Hundreds have tried to flee.
সাবাজতে বাসান সর তুললে এরিয়ার পুলিশে খবর হরি তারা কল করাই ইদ্যা কল করে 3-4 হতা হওয়া ভাইয়া আর হতার আবার না হয় কিছু বুঝি কিছু ন বুঝি আর হতাই
তো আইতো না ধরনের পরে আর সুরগুলি টিনতে মা বাবা টিয়া বলি দিও আর এড ক্যাম্প মানে বলি তো মা বাবা আর নিকে তাতে নীল তো গলতো না
ডর ফাই হেলাই ডরে গলি গিয়ে বাতে চিন্তা গলি গিয়ে হুয়াশা তিরিশা মরে যায় তুই তারা তো ইয়া হদ্দা তোর হাংখা করলাম আর মা লগ নফার বাপ লগ নফার আর ঘর বাইরে আর নই বর্মান না যায় ও বই আর বর্মান যায় আর তো বেশি কষ্ট লাগে আর এই বছর মানে আর কার খাই একটা একদম মুড়াই আবলাই মুড়া আবলাই আর দেশে আর নই রাতে ঘুমতে যাবার আর ওর গুছি মুড়া আর একটা তো মুড়া লই যাবার উড়ি বেলা যোগ্য বানার ওরে আর তো আর কে সব বানি লাই আর বর্মান বল মারো এই তো
আসলে ক্যাম্পের পরিস্থিতি এখন বর্তমান যেটা পরিস্থিতি ওখানে গ্রুপিং হওয়ার কারণে মানে বাচ্চারা তো কমফোর্টেবলি কোনো জায়গায় খেলা বা ওদের তো এমনিতে জায়গার সংকট যার কারণে হচ্ছে তারা খেলাধুলার জায়গাটা পাচ্ছে না ওখানে আর হচ্ছে সবসময় তারা এখন একটা আতঙ্কের মধ্যে এটা সবাই জানে যে সেজন্য তাদের মা বাবারা দেখা যায় যে বাচ্চাদের বের হতে তারা দিচ্ছে না there is pediatric hospital, child hospital. That's why we received the mother with a lot of problem. আমরা এখানে মূলত হচ্ছে বিভিন্ন ভ্যারাইটির পেশেন্ট আমরা ডিল করি তার মধ্যে হচ্ছে আমরা পিটিএসডি পেশেন্ট ডিল করি তারপর হচ্ছে আমরা সাইকোসিস পেশেন্ট ডিল করি ডিপ্রেশন অ্যাংজাইটি রিলেটেড, ডিডি, পোস্টপার্টাম ডিপ্রেশন রিলেটেড আমরা পেশেন্ট এখানে ডিল করি। অল কাইন্ড অফ পেশেন্ট আমরা এখানে ডিল করি, মেন্টাল হেলথ পেশেন্ট। বর্তমান হচ্ছে যে বিষয়গুলো ইমপ্যাক্ট ফেলতেছে মানে ক্যাম্পের কন্ডিশনের উপর ভিত্তি করে মানে মেন্টাল হেলথে যে বিষয়টা পার্টটাতে ইমপ্যাক্ট ফেলতেছে সেটা হচ্ছে ফার্স্ট যেটা বলতে হয় এটা হচ্ছে ভায়োলেন্সের কারণে, বিভিন্ন ধরনের ভায়োলেন্সের কারণে ইমপ্যাক্টটা পড়তেছে মেন্টাল হেলথে। তারপর হচ্ছে বিভিন্ন ধরনের ফিনান্সিয়াল ইস্যুর কারণে ইমপ্যাক্ট পড়তেছে। যেমন আমি কয়েকটা ইনসিডেন্টের কথা যদি বলি, আমাদের কিছু পেশেন্ট ছিল আপনার খুবই শারীরিক কন্ডিশন খুব খারাপ, হসপিটালে অবশ্যই এসে এখন এই মুহূর্তটাই হচ্ছে দরকার ভর্তি হওয়ার, মানে রাতে তার শরীরটা খুব খারাপ, কিন্তু সে ভয়ে হচ্ছে বাসা থেকে বের হতে পারতেছে না, কারণ সে বের হলে হয়তো তাকে কেউ গুলি মেরে দিবে বা তাকে কেউ আঘাত করবে, যেহেতু দুটা গ্রুপ সবসময় রাতের বেলা বা দিনের বেলা তারা হচ্ছে ওখানে ঘোরাঘুরি করে। তো সে কারণে সে বাচ্চা নিয়ে এমন পরিস্থিতি ছিল, সে যখন সকালবেলা হতে হতে দেখা গেছে বাচ্চাটা খুব খারাপ হয়ে গেছে এবং শেষ পর্যন্ত হসপিটালে আসতে আসতে বাচ্চাটা মারা গেছে। এবং মাটা তখন মনে করেন যে
ওই পাশে রুগী আছে, মনে হয় পেশেন্ট আছে। এখন বোন উগা বাচ্চা যদি হয়, উগা বাচ্চা হইতো গেলে ব্যথা গড়িব, ইবার মধ্যে বইয়ে না একখানা গিয়া করলে আরাম পাইবা বোন, এখন তো ব্যথা লাগিব একখানা, বেশি নসিবন বিষয় যাবে, ঠিক আছে না? আচ্ছা, যখন একটা মা ডেলিভারিতে আসে তখন বিভিন্ন কমপ্লিকেশন নিয়ে একটা মা আসে। নর্মাল পেশেন্টরা আসে নর্মাল ডেলিভারির জন্য, কিন্তু অনেক মারা আসে যারা কমপ্লিকেটেড। ওরা অনেকেই এমন সময় আসে যে একেবারে লাস্ট পর্যায়ে ডেলিভারিতে আসে, এমন লাস্ট পর্যায়ে যে খুব ব্লিডিং হচ্ছে, আবার তার প্রেশার একেবারে কমে গেছে, মোটামুটি শকের দিকেই অনেক পেশেন্টরা আসে। বড় তো কোনো অসুবিধা হল নেই। আসলে হয় কি, ক্যাম্পের পরটা হচ্ছে আপনার সন্ধ্যার পর থেকে ওদেরকে বেরোতে দেয় না, মানে ক্যাম্প সিচুয়েশনের কারণে অনেক সময় ফাইট হয়, গোলাগুলি হয়, একটা ব্যাপার, ওরা চাইলেও রাতে যে একটা কেয়ার নেবে এজন্য আসতে পারে না। তারপর আমরা যে পেশেন্টগুলো রিসিভ করি অনেকগুলা ইন্টিমেট পার্টনার ভায়োলেন্স, যেমন হাজব্যান্ড ওকে মারে, ফিজিক্যালি ভায়োলেন্স করে, আবার হচ্ছে অনেকগুলা রেপ কেস আছে যেগুলা আননোন পার্সন দ্বারা হয়, ইভেন হাজব্যান্ড নিজেও এটা সামিল হয়। আবার কেন হরদম চাই মনে রাখতো, এটা হচ্ছে এখন আমরা করি, মানে বাচ্চার যখন ডেলিভারি হয়ে যায় তারপরে হচ্ছে ওদের যে স্মার্ট কার্ড থাকে একটা, মা এবং বাবা, এদের দুজনের স্মার্ট কার্ডগুলো আমাদেরকে দেয়। যদি মা বাবার স্মার্ট কার্ড আনতে না পারে তাহলে এখনো পর্যন্ত ওরকম কোনো নির্দেশ নাই যে তুলতে পারবো কিনা। যদি তুলতে না পারে তাহলে ওরা আর এটার জন্য খাবার দাবার কিছু পায় না, মানে রেশন কার্ড পায় না। এটা নিয়ে খুব প্রবলেম ফেস করে ওরা। হচ্ছে ওই হাজব্যান্ডরা অনেক সময় চলে যায়, মানে অনেক জায়গায় চলে যায়, যার কারণে মারা না ওনার স্মার্ট কার্ড পায় না কিচ্ছু পায়, তখন হচ্ছে ও চাইলেও বাচ্চাটাকে আর তুলতে পারতেছে না।
ভবিষ্যতে আরাম আসিল আল্লাহ দিলে ডাক্তারখানা লই গিয়ে লয়জনের ঘরও গিয়ে দিল গিয়ে কলা আছে রাতে দিন ঘর রাখিল বাসি ইয়ে ডাক্তারখানা ইয়ে দিই কমপ্লেনের ব্যাপারে হদ শুন দিলে বাচ্চা এবার বাপ লাগিব অনার ডাকার মাঝে বাচ্চা তুলতি তো বাচ্চা এবার বাপ তো দায়ী ওই বাচ্চা এবার বাপ না থাকিলে আমি ফয়বার রাজ্য কেনা পাইন দি ফয়বার রাশন পত্র নফার সামনে সুরাইয়ে ফয়বার ডাটা তোলা পরে ডাটা কিভাবে তুলি দিয়া ফুসাল লইবা আর ডাটা তুলিবার আমি কোশিশ করি চাই তারা যদি খুশির ভাবে যদি তুলি নজর দেন নাহলে আমি ঘরত বইটা কিন্তু আর কি ব্যাপার করছু আসে না তুলি আর মন তো দিন দিন দৌড়ে যাইব গই দৌড়ে জনের পর একটা জ্ঞান হানকার হাসা হার বাড়ালা বেশি নিলে সমস্যা হরি মাদার ফাটাতে চাই স্কুলের ঘরে ফাটাতে চাই ফাইন্দের বালা করি বেলা কোশিশ করি বেলা নরবেলা পুরো ইয়ান খুশি সিয়ান করতে চাই তো মানে কি ফুয়াবে ভালো হইলে মাদ্রাসা যা ফেললে স্কুল পড়ি ফেললে আল্লাহ মোমে জিন্দগিলা বালা নয় ফায়দা নয় বনে ইয়ান নিজে খুশি করে চাই আল্লাহ আল্লাহ হায়াত নমরে বাচ্চা রাখিলে কের কের হাবস আর দাদার হাবস ইনারা নসেনি te ma ba mari ge to habas potro gatti inni radi di barma tota asdi inni ede lawa ka sansar nasa ka sansar yar pore ker habas budar habas la ba buri ai dele hoto pesu jaga busy gi hoy tikana la fai yana budu sobi ar ba fu inna saga sobi zapoto ma jildina sobi
When we were in Myanmar, we get a formal education, even though we were not allowed from the higher educations. The systems which is running around the camp is not the systematically what we have planned. Our students are deprived in basic educations and higher educations. So even our students and our youngs are not attached in our cultures and our national cultures because they are not getting quality and formal education. We want to introduce our generations, our children to our national culture, and we want to let them know what is human right, what is justice, what is modern world. So we want to see our generation as our future. Sometimes we are trying to make videos regarding our culture, regarding our cultural foods, our historical facts, and we show them. We face so many challenges, so many difficulties. We still never give up.
We fear that the children and youth living in the camps are becoming a lost generation. Without access to formal and accredited education or adequate livelihood opportunities, their progression did seem quite bleak. The only education that NGOs together have been able to provide, and we also have subsequently provided, are temporary learning centers. However, the learning centers are not necessarily formally recognized schools. Only about 26% of adolescents aged between 15 and 18 have been getting any sort of education or any learning experience in the camps, and out of those numbers, girls' access is even less than the boys. So that's a huge matter of concern. We are also very concerned about how this results in the parents becoming extremely worried for their children. This results in child labor. This also results in a lot of child marriage increase because they just marry off the daughters in the hopes that they would live a better life. And that in itself also brings in its own set of problems. Definitely there is a need for protecting them from trafficking, from drug abuse, from being subjected to different sorts of violence in the camps.
Burma dalalakule Burma jin dalalasi tara mani kafe naral muslim kitara dalalakula ase Burma dalalakuri tara lojaire arare Malaysia phasa diu hoine arare ring Burma ringum hode jaga yang logi লজাইরে আর বর্মার হুকুমত ধরে গেলে আর তোমরা সিটিজেন কার্ড নাই হেতলা আর ধরে গেলে আর ধরে আর 2 বছর জেল মাঝি 2 বছর জেল মারে 18 মাস ছিলাম 18 মাস আর আছে আমি জেলে ছিলাম জেলের কার্ড এটাতে মানে কয় বছর জেল মারছে জেলে কয় মাস ছিল জেল থেকে কখন বের হয়েছে কোন মাস কোন তারিখে জেল মারছে এটা লিখে দিছে আর কি যাইরে জিওল হানাই আনমা আর জিওল মারি জিওল পরে আর হতাই বাসা না বুঝি এবং আর হনকান তো মদত না পাই হনকান তো হেলম না পাই তাই গাত অসুখ লই বিয়ারাম লই রে হানা লই রে চলা লই রে বেশি কষ্ট হয় তো জিওল হারা সে বাদে জিওল হুরাই রে আর রে মংদু রেকা স্টেডিয়াম মানে মংদু মানে আনি দিয়ে গাই আনি দিয়ে রে আর খারাপ মাদে আর তো গদ্দ নাই তাই আর গাছে আইরে এবার এগুলো আই গেল kan ar bay gwaje afon bay ma dua দিয়ে afon bay বাফগwa প্রায় 10 মাস চলে এখন খবর নাই কি টালিনা কি মালয়েশিয়া কি বর্মা রিঙ্গুম জিওলত হন জায়গা মধ্যে দজে এখন মানে হিয়ান এখন মানে হামদগিরি তোর হেরিমা গরি লগিরে সিস্টেম এখন খবর নাই হন খবর পাওয়া যায়
The government of Bangladesh made a significant effort in welcoming Rohingya people, including transforming the hills in a network of camps and setting up the necessary infrastructure.
The Bangladesh authorities have a responsibility to protect the Rohingya. Certainly, Myanmar has the main responsibility for the situation of the Rohingya, but Bangladesh, like any country, has an international obligation to protect all people that are in its jurisdiction, including refugees. In this case, that means ensuring that they have basic rights, access to justice, and not forcing them back to a country where they would be at serious risk.
As of September 2023, only 30% of the humanitarian funding required for basic services to Rohingya people is funded. The decrease in the level of the humanitarian funding has dire consequences for Rohingya. Since the start of 2023, the food ration distributed to Rohingya has decreased by 40%. In a situation where access to basic services for Rohingya people overwhelmingly depend on humanitarian assistance, there needs to be a commitment by donor countries and humanitarian actors so that a minimal suitable level of services is maintained. And this question of survival is the question of whether a space exists or not in the Rohingya camps for Rohingyas to organize socially, culturally, politically. Obviously, it's not for humanitarian actors to organize that space, but I think there is a role for humanitarian actors to ensure that conditions for the space to exist are there and are maintained. And of course, access to education fits into that. But I think more largely, the question of humanitarian assistance and humanitarian funding fits into that through the perspective it is allowing Rohingya people to have or not to have.
আরা হনে দেশন নয় আরা ছিলাম দে বর্মা তো আরা তো জাগো করিব হনে দিনের দিন আরা জাগা জমিন আছে এটা ঘর বাড়ি আছে তো তোমার তো আরা যদি মরি যাই দিলে ফোন ধরে যাইলে পরিচয় হবান এ বাবতে ডর ফোন জিন আছে বুদ্ধি জুন ওই উনরে পরিচয় ইয়াং ঘরে দিল
বুড়ো দূর দেখে না ভাই আমার এত ভালো লাগে রে যাবো গলা চেষ্টা করে যাবো গলা মানে এদের তো মানে মারি ফেলে এটা তাকে লাভ কি মা মারি ফেলে বাপ মারি ফেলে
মানে মেলারে ফেরত যেতে না বর্মা মাঝে নিজে জনম বইতে সরু তরুরে দেশি আনালা অভাব ফেটে ফুরুয়া বালা যদি হইলে শান্তি বাবু যদি বক্ষণ যদি শান্তি ভাত দেয় নইলে আড়াই যাইতে চাই যা কিছু যদি অশান্তি চলত দিবা যদি অশান্তি থাকে দেয় নইলে আড়াইয়ে যাইতে না চাই শান্তিলে যাইতে চাই দি অশান্তিলে যাইতে না চাই
네, 저희 국경 없는 의사회에서 준비한 다큐멘터리 함께 시청하셨는데요. 오늘 스페셜 토크의 게스트인 아른 재관님을 소개를 해드리고 본격적으로 현장의 이야기를 들어보려고 합니다. 아른 재관님은 국경 없는 의사회 호주 사무소에서 인도적 지원 어드바이저로 활동하고 계시고요. 방글라데시 콕스바자르뿐만 아니라 가자를 포함해서 예멘, 시리아, 베네수엘라에서 국경 없는 의사회 활동을 펼쳤습니다. 아프가니스탄, 이라크, 레바논, 요르단 등에서도 인도주의 활동을 경험을 쌓았습니다. 오늘 여러분을 뵙기 위해서 특별히 방한해 주셨고요. 먼저 아룬님께서 준비하신 로힝야 활동 이야기를 한번 들어보도록 하겠습니다.
Hello everyone again. A lot of familiar faces from the previous session, so I won't introduce myself. But my name is Arun Jagan and I work as the Humanitarian Affairs Lead for MSF Australia.
네, 안녕하세요. 바로 앞에 있던 세션에서 뵀던 분들을 또 뵙게 되어 너무 기쁩니다. 또 한국에 초대해 주셔서 또 로힝야 상황에 대해서 여러분들께 말씀드릴 수 있게 되어 매우 기쁩니다.
I've worked in many countries over the last 20 years, but I found myself in Bangladesh in 2017 on my first assignment.
저는 지난 20년간 많은 곳들을 갔었는데요. 그러다가 2017년 국경 없는 의사회 첫 파견으로 방글라데시를 갔습니다.
So initially I was stationed in Dhaka, working on a community health program for an urban population, but nothing could prepare me for what I was about to witness, not even some of my previous experiences.
처음에는 수도 다카에서 도시 주민 대상으로 지역 사회 보건 서비스를 제공했는데요. 그런데 이후 제가 목격한 것은 이전 경험과는 비교할 수 없는 것들이었습니다.
So the Rohingya people, I'm not sure how many people know about them. Can I see a raise of hands of how many people know about the Rohingya?
네, 로힝야족에 대해서 아시는 분 한번 손을 들어봐 주실까요?
Right, a few hands, but not many. Yeah, you know, it's an incredible thing. They are one of the most persecuted people in the world, but there has been very little recognition of this.
많은 분들이 이제 손을 들어주시진 않았지만 그래도 아시는 분들이 꽤 계시는군요. 로힝야족은 세계에서 가장 핍박받는 민족 중에 하나입니다. 하지만 이들에 대한 관심은 부족합니다.
So I'm so grateful that you've all made the trip here to come and attend and see and learn about the Rohingya people because they really, really deserve it.
그런데 그럼에도 불구하고 여러분들께서 이렇게 시간을 내서 참석해 주셔서 로힝야족에 대한 관심을 보여줘서 진심으로 감사드립니다.
Their plight really does demand urgent attention. MSF, along with myself, feels a deep responsibility to share what we've seen and push for meaningful action.
왜냐하면 이분들은 긴급한 관심을 필요로 한 사람들이기 때문에 그렇습니다. 저와 또 국경 없는 의사회는 목격한 것을 공유하고 또 의미 있는 행동을 촉구해야 할 책임을 절실하게 느끼고 있습니다.
So since 2017, I've had 6 postings in Bangladesh, including being MSF's head of mission there at least 3 times. I just returned from Bangladesh last year, so before I went to Palestine, I was in Bangladesh. And it always breaks my heart to see the vastness of the camp, the size of it all. Imagine over 1 million people, 1.2 million people living in 23 square kilometers. Gangnam is 36 square kilometers and has 560,000 people.
네, 저는 2017년부터 방글라데시에 6번 파견되었는데요. 이 중 3번은 국경 없는 의사회 미션 총괄을 맡았습니다. 제가 작년에도 방글라데시에 다녀왔는데요. 거기에 있는 그 거대한 난민 수용소 볼 때마다 가슴이 매우 아픕니다. 23제곱킬로미터에 100만 명이 살고 있습니다. 한번 상상해 보실까요? 지금 저희가 있는 강남구에는 36제곱킬로미터에 56만 명이 살고 있습니다.
So today I'll share some of my observations, my reflections, some of my personal experiences of working in the camps, and as well as some possible solutions that we can all do to help them. I think it's good though for us to begin with, how did 1.2 million Rohingya end up in refugee camps?
오늘은 제가 목격한 것 또 거기에서 생각했던 것들을 나누게 될 텐데요. 우리가 이들이 직면한 어려움을 어떻게 타개할 수 있을까 함께 생각해 봤으면 좋겠습니다. 먼저 어떻게 하다가 이렇게 100만 명이나 되는 로힝야족이 이곳에 모이게 되었을까요?
So this didn't happen overnight. The roots of this crisis stretch back over 40 years. You might have heard in the documentary. So let's go back to the basics because I know not many people here know about the Rohingya. So they are an ethnic group. They are primarily Muslim. They're from Rakhine State in Myanmar. In 1974, Myanmar passed a law that stripped them of their citizenship, setting the stage for decades of persecution.
사실 하루아침에 벌어진 거는 아닙니다. 40여 년 전으로 거슬러 가는데요. 아까 손 들어주셨던 분들을 통해서 알 수 있듯이 익숙하지 않은 분들이니까 익숙하지 않은 민족이니까 설명을 좀 드리겠습니다. 로힝야족은 미얀마 라카인주에 주로 거주하는 무슬림 소수 민족입니다. 그런데 1974년도에 미얀마가 이들의 시민권을 박탈하는 법을 통과시켰습니다. 그 이후로 수십 년 동안 이 로힝야족은 박해를 계속 받게 되었습니다.
The language they spoke wasn't recognized. Themselves, they weren't citizens. They were denied access to education. They weren't allowed to meet with more than 3 people at a time. 3 men weren't allowed to meet more than 3 men weren't allowed to meet. Otherwise, they had to get permission. So they were really faced under this a real hard situation since 1974. And since 1974, there have been at least 6 violent crackdowns on the Rohingya, forcing tens of thousands of Rohingya to flee Bangladesh. Some returned to Myanmar, some stayed in Bangladesh.
이들의 언어도 인정을 받지 못했고요. 교육 당연히 받지 못했습니다. 그리고 3인 이상의 남성들이 모이려면 승인을 받아야 했습니다. 1974년 이후로 계속 그런 삶을 살았고요. 그 이후 최소 6차례 폭력적으로 이들을 토벌한 사례들이 있습니다. 수만 명의 로힝야족이 방글라데시로 피난을 갔고 일부는 미얀마로 다시 돌아갔지만 방글라데시에 남아있는 분들도 계십니다.
And this has kept on going for the past 40 years. Even as long as 2 months ago, even as much as 2 months ago, 10,000 Rohingya fled across the border to the camps. So, but in 2017, when I was there, the largest wave of violence erupted, and close to about 800,000 Rohingya people fled Bangladesh, joining an existing 200,000 odd people, creating the world's largest refugee camp.
네, 그리고 이러한 사태가 40년 동안 계속 지속이 되었거든요. 불과 몇 달 전에도 수천 명의 로힝야족이 방글라데시로 피난을 갔습니다. 2017년 당시 심각한 폭력 사태가 발생하면서 그때는 85만 명이 한 번에 방글라데시로 피신을 갔는데요. 기존 20만 명이 있었으니까 그 더해지면 세계 최대 규모의 난민 캠프가 형성되게 되었습니다.
And I really remember this moment very clearly. It was a very shocking moment. It was, a population fleeing violence. We treated thousands of people for gun-related wounds, for knife-related wounds, smoke inhalation, and in many cases, extreme sexual violence.
저는 그 2017년 그 당시 장면을 정말 생생하게 기억합니다. 상상할 수 없는 폭력을 피해 떠난 사람들이죠. 저희는 수백 명의 사람들을 치료했고 총상, 화상, 연기 흡입한 사람, 또 심각한 성폭력을 당한 사람들이 있었습니다.
I remember one man coming to me and giving me his child as soon as he crossed the river, saying, "Hold on, I've left my child in the river somewhere because I couldn't carry both of them to safety." And he was going back hoping that he could find his child, and he never did in the end.
그때 한 남자가 강을 건너서 저에게 아이를 건넸습니다. 지금 아이가 하나 더 있는데 내가 한 명밖에 들지 못해서 제가 다시 돌아올 테니까 얘 좀 맡아줘 하고 갔는데 다시 돌아오지 못했습니다.
The amount of women that I've spoken to who the armed groups in Myanmar, they brutalized them, they committed violence against them, made their husbands watch that disgusting scene, and then kill the husbands in front of them. There was more than one woman that shared this story with me.
그리고 또 이런 얘기도 들었습니다. 여성들이 미얀마에서 무장단체들에게 강제적으로 성폭력을 당하는데 그 장면을 남편들이 지켜봐야 됐고 여성들의 눈앞에서 남편들을 죽였습니다. 이 이야기를 한두 명이 이상 저에게 얘기를 해주었습니다.
And these are not isolated incidents. There are over 1.2 million stories like this. And what is the key issue here? The key issue here is fear, discrimination, and that has led to them being categorized as stateless. But that is a term that was forced upon them. They'd have a home. They have a home in Myanmar. They have a home in Rakhine State, or Arakan as they like to call it.
네, 그런데 이게 제가 그 이야기를 들은 한두 사람의 문제가 아니란 겁니다. 100만 명이 넘는 사람들이 처한 현실입니다. 이것은 두려움으로 인해 생긴 문제고요. 이들은 부국적자입니다. 사실 이들은 집도 있었습니다. 이름도 있었고 뭐 언어도 있었죠. 그런데 이 무국적이라는 그 상태가 이들에게 강제로 주어진 겁니다.
So they've been denied education, livelihoods, and freedom of movement. And this was even before they arrived in Bangladesh. So this is not a new thing for them, but it's certainly a much bigger experience. Can you imagine 1 million people packed into flimsy bamboo huts that were built with tarpaulin and bamboo, an average of about 6 to 10 people per tent, surrounded by barbed wire, they're forbidden from working, and their children only receive 3 years of education, and they rely completely on food rations from international organizations.
사실 이들에게 필요한 것은 교육, 이동의 자유, 생계의 자유입니다. 이들은 이러한 자유 박탈은 방글라데시 오기 이전부터 박탈된 것입니다. 지금 이들은 대나무로 된 그 집을 지어 살고 타포린 방수천을 덮은 오두막에서 살고 있습니다. 이 좁은 곳에서 6명의 사람들이 살고 있는데요. 또 이 자녀들의 아이들은 3년밖에 교육을 받지 못합니다. 구호단체 식량 배급에 의존하고 있습니다.
And unlike Gaza and Palestine, which we just spoke about before, aid is being allowed there. Aid organizations are allowed to work in the camps. The problem is too big for aid organizations to manage. We are not state replacement actors. And so it's not that the system is failing, it's that it was never designed to be permanent. It was never designed to meet the needs of 1.2 million people.
그런데 지금 이전 세션에서 가자 다큐멘터리를 보셨는데요. 거기와는 달리 구호 물품 들어갈 수 있습니다. 허가되어 있습니다. 문제는 구호 단체들이 감당하기에 너무 문제가 크다는 겁니다. 국가를 대신할 수는 없으니까요, 저희가. 그래서 이 모든 시스템이 지금 망가져 있습니다. 120만 명을 지속적으로 영구적으로 지원하도록 우리가 시스템이 구축된 건 아니었거든요.
We have consistently and repeatedly warned about the risk of disease outbreaks and the effect that will have on a camp like the Rohingya camps. And that risk is really a reality now. And I want to highlight to you a specific incident that happened last year. One of the largest outbreaks of scabies occurred in the camp.
네, 국경의사회는 이렇게 수용하는 방식을 지속하다가는 질병이 유행할 수 있다고 경고했는데요. 정말 이것이 현실이 되었습니다. 그 오미라는 피부병이 돌기 시작합니다.
And scabies, and when I mean the largest outbreak, I mean the largest outbreak in the world. 40% of the camp was infected with scabies. That's over 400,000, that's close to 500,000 people being affected by one disease. And if you've ever had scabies, you know that it is a miserable, miserable disease.
이것은 대규모로 옴이 유행한 사례가 되었는데요. 전체 인구 중에 40%, 그러니까 40만 명에서 50만 명이 넘는 사람이 이 단일 질병 옴에 감염된 겁니다. 혹시라도 옴에 감염돼 보신 분들은 아시겠지만 굉장히 고통스러운 질병입니다.
What happens is tiny mites, they bury under your skin and then they defecate, and that causes an intense irritation and sleepless nights. Scabies is just the most visible symptom of the worsening conditions. It's so easy to treat. All you need to do is take a bit of medication, make sure your clothes are clean, make sure your family's clothes are clean, and your bedding is clean, and it's cured.
그 옴이라는 병은요, 작은 진드기가 피부 밑을 파고드는 건데요. 너무 가렵습니다. 잠을 잘 수가 없어요. 그리고 사실 이 옴은 이들의 악화된 건강 상태를 그냥 표면적으로 보여주는 하나의 증상일 뿐입니다. 근데 옴은 사실 치료가 굉장히 쉽습니다. 약 먹고 옷도 빨고 침구도 빨면 금방 나을 수 있습니다.
But how do you do that for 1.2 million people? How do you make 1.2 million people take medication at the same time, clean and replace all their clothes at the same time when they don't even have enough water to drink for the day?
근데 그게 사실 치료 방식은 쉽지만 120만 명을 한 번에 한다는 것이 불가능한 겁니다. 이들을 동시에 약을 먹여야 되고 침구를 동시에 다 빨아야 되고 옷을 다 깨끗하게 빨아야 되는 겁니다. 사실 이들은 지금 마실 물도 부족한 상황이거든요.
So effectively, the conditions have been created that the Rohingya are dependent on humanitarian aid actors. Right now, they receive $8 US dollars a month for food.
지금 구축된 환경이 이 로힝야족이 구호단체의 구호에 의존하도록 지금 되어 있습니다. 이들은 한 달에 단 10,000원, 그러니까 $8죠. 식비로 생존하고 있습니다.
So that's less than 10 cents a meal. Can you imagine how much stunting happens in the camp, how much malnutrition happens in the camp? Imagine a whole generation of children, of pregnant women who are underweight, giving birth to children who are underweight, whose brains don't have enough nutrition to develop, and then also restricting their right to receive education. It's a scary thought.
네, 그래서 이것은 다시 따져보면 한 끼에 10센트, 그러니까 150원이 안 되는 돈입니다. 성장을 제대로 하지 못하고 영양실조가 매우 심각합니다. 아이들은 제대로 성장하지 못하고 임산부들은 영양실조 상태에서 아이들을 낳습니다. 이들이 낳는 아이들은 뇌가 제대로 발달하지 못했습니다. 거기다가 교육도 부족하다 보니까 한 세대의 성장이 육체적으로나 정신적으로나 지연되고 있습니다.
Unfortunately, help is not on the way. International funds have decreased, and global attention has shifted elsewhere to other conflicts. But these people who are forced from their homes by violence, they rely on this aid. So now is not the time to reduce that funding. Korea, I believe, can play a key role. Korea can really engage with the ASEAN member states on addressing this crisis, to continue to fund humanitarian programs and advocate for durable solutions.
하지만 도움의 손길은 점점 줄어들고 있습니다. 전 세계 다른 분쟁 지역으로 세계의 관심이 옮겨가고 있습니다. 하지만 우린 기억해야 됩니다. 폭력적으로 삶의 터전에서 쫓겨난 로힝야족은 우리의 도움에 의존하고 있습니다. 아직은 원조를 줄일 때가 아닙니다. 저는 한국이 중요한 역할을 할 수 있다고 믿습니다. 한국은 아세안 회원국들과 계속 소통하고 또 협력하고 인도주의 프로그램의 자금을 지속적으로 지원하고 지속 가능한 해결책을 촉구할 수 있습니다.
I also think we can all play a strong role as well. And I want to share with you a project that we did with the Rohingya community. It's called Two Crows. So you can imagine the level of discrimination the Rohingya face. They're stateless. They're not welcome in their home country of Bangladesh. They're also not welcome in countries where they are refugees in. Sorry, not Bangladesh, in Myanmar. They're not welcome in countries where they're refugees.
네, 우리 모두가 더 큰 역할을 할 수 있다고 생각하는데요. 저희가 로힝야족 커뮤니티와 진행했던 프로젝트 공유해드리겠습니다. 두 마리의 까마귀라는 프로젝트고요. 로힝야족이 겪는 차별의 수준을 여러분들이 느끼실 수 있을 거예요. 이들은 무국적자입니다. 이들의 떠나온 미얀마에서도 또 지금 살고 있는 그 난민 국가에서도 환영받지 못하고 있습니다.
So at the core of this issue is a simple yearning, a simple need to be recognized as humans. So last year we did this project to mark the 6 years of the Rohingya people's exodus in 2017. I'd like for you to see this project.
네, 이 문제의 핵심은 인간으로서 인정받고 싶다는 정말 단순한 욕구입니다. 작년 2017년 로힝야족 탈출 6주년을 기리면서 했던 프로젝트 보시겠습니다.
네, 저희가 영상을 준비했는데요. 좀 같이 시청하시고 이어가도록 하겠습니다.
Even the history that I'm going to make with the crow and the banana tree, it will make us lighter of feeling when we see the situation, reminding us and connecting us with our heart to the land. That is separating little by little, particularly for the young generation.
كشاهدنا كذا أصله كذا منشر بوش دي فردي أنا كشام ماذا أصله هندلا كسو كشام ماذا داسه سوابق أصله أركشو كشام ماذا داسه منشر بافسنتا كبافه حرامية تاكيد ثاره
bala kelon hale fotugo manchur mani rohingya babu to buza jana babu pikashi question le buza but le different babu honike buza den oti ki ar first time le oy bodi anla
mani manche boroma goren dilashi manche gor bari mani girati dilashi আর ফোন দিয়ে খেলাইতো বেরিয়ে দিয়ে গিয়াতে করতো তারপরে মানে দাহান টান লাগাইতো মানুষে আর যাকে মানে ফারাইয়ে থাকি ফারার মাঝে ঘরে থাকি তো
We have some locally made song, locally made dancing. We have our own language. We have our own religious practice. Our cultural wear is longi and sharp. One thing I am very proud of myself being a Rohingya. We have the generosity. No matter how poor I am, people always show the generosity.
the time mado bahut thoda shilam tu anla to du janai to er jadu dekir ar bahut kaise local chance hoida ase
I really impressed with the children involvement because they are our future. If they don't involve such an activity, for us it is not easy to maintain our culture.
একসময় আমাদের গমানসি একখান হাত হইলে না তাই যেমন আছে বাংলাদেশের ক্যাম্পোতেরিয়া জহনক গো কুমার জইছে রসমাজি গিয়ে দিতে গিয়ে তো কুমে বাদা আছে দুনিয়া তুন হারাদা আছে আজ যাই খাইতে আসা
네, 지금 같이 시청하신 그 영상이 저희 아룬님께서 콕스바자르에서 현장 캠프로 있으실 때 직접 진행하셨던 거라고 제가 전화를 받았어요. 아이들이 민담이죠. 그 폭테일이라고 불리는 그 아주 재미있는 이야기로 아트워크를 함께 만들어 나가는 프로젝트였다고 들었는데요. 아룬님께서 계속해서 설명해 주시면 좋을 것 같습니다.
Yeah, I'll keep it short as well because I know we're running out of time, but it's just a simple, they need a simple need to be recognized. So I encourage everyone here to do what we did, which was to laugh, to share stories, to make something together. And the Rohingya, they presented their story to the world. And, I'm sure you as myself was very touched when we saw that video.
여러분들도 아마 그 비디오를 보면서 이 비디오를 보면서 아마 마음이 움직이셨을 텐데요. 그것처럼 이들이 얘기를 전달한 것처럼 여러분들도 여러분들이 이야기들을 이렇게 나눠 주셨으면 좋겠습니다.
And for a brief moment when we were doing this project, our staff, the Bangladeshi people, didn't interact with the Rohingya people as people who are seeking healthcare or as a disease, but as storytellers, as experts of their own life, as masters of a craft. Isn't it that fantastic just to be seen as a human?
이 기간 동안 국경 없는 의사회 직원들은 이 로힝야족을 어떤 치료가 필요한 자로 만나지 않았습니다. 이들은 이야기꾼이고 각자 삶의 전문가들입니다. 뛰어난 스토리 장인이기도 하죠. 이들을 하나의 인간으로 바라봤다는 겁니다.
So I encourage all of you to do the same. Learn about the Rohingya people, share their culture, follow some of the prominent Rohingya photographers on Instagram or on social medias. Send them your appreciation and thoughts. It will go a very, very long way because this problem is not going anywhere.
네. 그래서 여러분들도 함께 해주셨으면 좋겠습니다. 로힝야족에 대해서 한번 공부를 해보시고요. 인스타그램에 찾아보시면 로힝야족이 사진작가로서 활동하는 그런 계정들이 있거든요. 그분들을 팔로우하면서 정말 멋진 작업들을 하고 있습니다. 라고 얘기를 따뜻하게 전해주시면 좋겠습니다.
The world is not such a big place. And just as you all had the courage to come here, please have the courage to connect with these people because we can't wait for policies to change, but we can make some changes within our own behavior right here and right now.
네, 우리 세상은 그렇게 크지 않습니다. 여러분 모두가 이렇게 용기를 내서 이 자리에 함께 해주셨듯이 여러분도 또 한 번 용기를 내서 이들과 소통해 주셨으면 좋겠습니다. 저희가 정책이 바뀔 때까지 기다릴 수는 없습니다. 바로 지금 이 자리에서 변화를 만들 수 있습니다. 시간을 내주셔서 진심으로 감사드립니다.
Thank you so much for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
네, 아룬님께서 이제 방글라데시 콕스바자르에서 활동했던 내용을 좀 소개를 해주셨는데요. 혹시 질문이 있으신 분이 계실까요? 저희 오늘 로힝야에 대해서 처음 알게 된 분들도 많으신 것 같은데 어떤 질문이어도 괜찮으니까요. 네, 앞쪽에 학생분께서 질문을 해주실 예정인가 봅니다.
안녕하세요. 전 기독교 대안학교를 다니고 있는 학생입니다. 학교에서 컴패션 동아리를 하면서 가난에 대해 공부하고 있는데 혹시 선생님께서는 가난을 어떻게 생각하고 계신지 궁금합니다. 가난을 어떻게 생각하고 계시는지.
It's been happening for as long as you've been alive, for as long as I've been alive. But I think, we have the tools now to alleviate poverty, really, right? Look how connected we all are. I flew across a plane to come here to speak to you all today. So you can see all the different technological advancements that we have. We have the technology and the means to do it right now. All there needs to be is willingness from us to do so.
네, 가난은 아마 우리가 살아있는 동안 항상 존재하는 것일 겁니다. 그런데 이제 우리는 가난의 고통을 경감할 수 있는 도구가 우리 손에 있습니다. 얼마나 뛰어난 기술들이 많이 발전하고 있으니까. 근데 우리의 의지에 이제 달린 것 같습니다. 도구의 문제가 아닙니다.
And I think, people, it's not about giving people money, it's not about giving people food, but it's giving people the opportunity or allowing people to have the opportunity to earn money for themselves, to get themselves out of poverty. The Rohingya people, for example, all they need is legal rights. If they had legal rights, they'd be able to lift themselves out of poverty. But that hasn't been afforded to them. You were here for the situation in Palestine, same thing. If there was no occupation, if there was no oppression, those people would be able to lift themselves out of the situation they're in. So it's not about giving, it's also about making sure that people have the right rights to flourish.
네, 돈과 음식을 주는 것 그것이 다가 아닙니다. 사실 이들이 스스로 돈을 벌 수 있도록 가난에서 벗어날 수 있도록 기회를 주는 것이 중요합니다. 사실 이 로힝야족에게 국적 아니면 법적 신분을 준다면 이들이 일을 할 수 있고요. 교육도 받을 수 있습니다. 많은 게 해결이 되겠죠. 사실 팔레스타인 가자 지구에서 일어나는 일도 유사합니다. 폭력을 가하지 않는다면 이들은 스스로 자립할 수 있는 사람들입니다. 다시 말해서 가난이란 것은 뭔가를 줘서 해결하는 것이 아니라 그들에게 갖고 있는 그 권리를 회복시켜 주는 겁니다.
And until that moment arrives, you have organizations like MSF who will help to fill those gaps, but those gaps are very big, so yeah.
그때까지는 저희 국경 없는 의사회처럼 그 간극을 채워주는 기관들이 열심히 밟고 뛰겠습니다.
네, 혹시 또 질문 있으신 분 계실까요? 네.
네. 질문할 기회를 주셔서 감사합니다. 현재 남아시아 여러 국가의 정치 상황이 되게 안 좋은 것으로 알고 있어요. 예를 들어 미얀마는 지금 내전 중이고 방글라데시는 얼마 전에 총리분이 인도로 피신 가셨어요. 반정부 시위 때문에. 그것 때문에 이 방글라데시에 있는 로힝야 난민 캠프의 상황이 악화되거나 그랬을 수도 있을 것 같은데 현재 상황이 어떤지 궁금합니다. 예를 들어서 난민 캠프에 인원이 늘어났다거나 아니면 그쪽에 치안 공백이 생겨서 뭐 약간 더 폭력적으로 위험한 상황을 겪을 수도 있다거나 아니면 방글라데시 정부의 지원금이 줄었다거나 혹시 이런 구체적인 최근 그 정치 변동 때문에 변화된 게 있을까요?
Definitely, and I think you asked the right question of the instability and conflict in Myanmar is continuing, and that's still causing trouble for the Rohingya. Just last month, I think there was fighting between two parties, and civilians were massacred and they had to leave and run to Bangladesh. But Bangladesh is, they've allowed a few people in, but they've also closed their borders as well to make sure that they don't have too many people coming over. Because Bangladesh is a country that's also struggling to maintain its own citizens' needs and things there. So,
네, 좋은 질문 해주셨습니다. 지금 미얀마도 사실 전국이 굉장히 불안정하기 때문에 로힝야족의 어려움이 배가 되고 있는 건 사실입니다. 지난 달만 해도 그 미얀마에 있는 그 두 당사자 간 그 전쟁, 분쟁 때문에 더 많은 로힝야족이 이제 피난을 갔습니다. 그런데 방글라데시도 사실 사정이 좋지 않기 때문에 국경문을 닫고 있고요. 방글라데시 입장도 이해는 가죠. 그 자국들의 시민들의 그 필요도 이미 있기 때문에 그렇습니다.
we were all very worried when there was a political instability in Bangladesh because we were sure that the Rohingya people would be left behind because of other priorities, but it remains to be seen what this new government is going to do for the Rohingya. We were very happy that the new president mentioned that the Rohingya were a priority and that he was going to continue the services to them, but again, this is just a temporary solution, so we need to make sure that every government is working towards more durable solutions, more permanent solutions.
그리고 방글라데시 정치 불안할 때 우려를 많이 했습니다. 왜냐하면 우선순위에서 분명 로힝야족이 밀려난 게 분명하기 때문에 그렇습니다. 그래서 지켜봐야 합니다. 지금 방글라데시 새로운 대통령도 로힝야족을 지원하겠다고 말은 하긴 했지만 그 돕는 그 방법도 사실은 임시 방편이라고 생각합니다. 오히려 지속 가능한 솔루션을 우리가 찾아야 할 것 같습니다.
네, 혹시 또 질문 있으실까요? 네, 가운데에 마이크 전달 부탁드릴게요.
네, 안녕하세요. 오늘 로힝야 난민에 대해서 처음 알게 돼서 굉장히 인상 깊게 잘 들었습니다. 제가 오늘 말씀해 주시는 영상과 말씀해 주시는 내용을 들으면서 들었던 질문은 사실은 이 난민에 관련된 문제입니다. 어떻게 보면 굉장히 근본적일 수도 있는 문제인데 방금 이전에 그 질문을 주셨던 질문자님들에 대한 답변을 들으면서도 생각이 들었던 게 여기 로힝야 난민들이 계속해서 유입이 되고 있고 그다음에 여기 있는 굉장히 많은 사람들이 본인들의 권리를 회복하고 자치적으로 살아갈 수 있는 시스템을 만드는 게 굉장히 중요하다라는 걸 강조해 주셨는데요. 사실 이 난민들은 살아왔던 환경이나 연령, 종교, 성별 이런 부분에서 굉장히 많은 차이가 있을 수 있을 거라고 생각을 합니다. 이런 문화적 차이라든지 이런 종교적 차이라든지 이런 간극이 있게 되면 아무래도 난민들 사이에서도 어느 정도 갈등이라든지 해결해야 되는 과제가 있을 거라고 생각이 드는데요. 국경없는 의사회 그리고 거기서 근무를 하고 계시는 분들이 이러한 간극을 채우는 데 있어서 어떤 도움을 줄 수 있는지 그리고 어떤 부분이 중요하다고 생각하는지 아론지건님께 질문 드리고 싶습니다.
And I think the first starting point is to give them the rights, right? So let's make sure that that's the starting point. And the questions that you asked, I think, are for long, that they need to be resolved as time goes on. And I think one of the questions you were like, how do people assimilate? How do people work together? How do communities go together? And you're suggesting that the Rohingya people, there's a bit of a gap. But I think that's for us the challenge. That's what we should take that challenge head on and help reduce that gap. And I think little actions such as treating them as humans, learning about their culture, accepting them, seeing who they are as people will help reduce that gap, because I'm sure, as you did today, just for 40 minutes, 1 hour, you would have learned something about them. You would have felt some sort of connection, some sort of empathy towards them. If in 1 hour we can achieve that, imagine what you could do over a lifetime of people if they have their own rights. And if they were sitting on this stage here talking to you today, it would be a whole different experience.
네, 좋은 말씀해 주셨습니다. 일단 첫 단추는 이분들의 국적, 그들의 가장 근본적인 그 권한을 회복해 주는 거고요. 지금 말씀해 주신 그 커뮤니티에 어떤 녹아들어서 서로 협력할 수 있게 살게 하는 것, 그 간극을 줄여주는 것, 이거는 장기적으로 계속 해야 되는 것 같습니다. 그 간극을 줄이기 위해서는 작은 행동들부터 시작을 할 것 같아요. 저희가 그들의 문화를 배우고 그들을 사람으로서 바라보는 거죠. 하나의 인간으로서 바라보는 거죠. 오늘 짧은 그 40분, 1시간도 안 되는 이 시간 안에 지금 참석하신 분들께서는 새로운 것을 배우게 됐고, 로힝야족이라는 로힝야라는 낯선 사람들에 대해서 공감을 하게 됐습니다. 그런 짧은 시간에 우리가 그것을 해낼 수 있다면 우리가 앞으로 그 긴 남은 삶 속에서 이들의 이야기를 이런 자리에 초대해서 또 듣고 계속 알아가는 노력을 하면 그 간극이 얼마나 좁혀질 수 있을까요?
But I don't want to take away from the seriousness of what you mentioned, which was about Islamophobia, even, right? Like some people have that prejudices towards people of the Muslim faith, and I think that's a huge problem here. We're seeing that with the Rohingya, we're seeing that in Palestine, and that's something is a shame. It's a real shame on humanity right now, and it's not something you or I can combat individually, but collectively, it's something that we all need to do.
네. 하지만 그 말씀해주신 그 실질적으로 그 이슬람이라는 종교에 대한 편견, 그 이슬람에 대한 두려움이 실제하기 때문에 그 질문을 제가 너무 가볍게 넘기고 싶지는 않습니다. 근데 그것을 사실 볼 때마다 저는 너무 안타깝습니다. 지금 아마 그 문제는 저와 또 이제 참석하신 분들과 함께 하나하나 혼자 해결할 수 있는 문제는 아닐 거예요. 우리가 다 같이 이거는 힘을 써야 해결할 수 있는 문제라고 생각합니다.
네, 혹시 또 질문 있으신 분 계실까요? 여기부터 좀 부탁드릴게요.
So thank you very much for your presentation. First of all, it was very insightful. Thank you. I want to ask a rather technical question. Actually, you've mentioned about gender-based violence that were very prominent within the in the refugee camp. And then I was wondering how you are addressing those kind of gender-based violence, especially in this very densely populated community, because like anonymizing the victims and then addressing those problems with respect to victims' privacy is very important, I think. And that in this regard, how MSF is addressing those kind of problems. Thank you.
그럼 여기 한국 분들을 위해서 통역을 해드리자면요. 지금 아까 발표하실 때 성폭력, 젠더 기반 폭력이 수용소 내에서 굉장히 만연하다고 하셨는데요. 사실 그 상황을 보면 수용소가 굉장히 인구 밀집, 과밀된 공간이기 때문에 사실 프라이버시를 여성들을 보호해 주는 것도 쉽지 않을 것 같습니다. 그리고 이 상황 속에서 이 맥락 속에서 어떻게 MSF는 대응하고 있는지 궁금합니다.
Yeah, and it's a good question, and it's particularly devastating, right, for Rohingya women who fled that sexual violence in Myanmar, only to have a really horrible experience also in the camps. It's quite a terrible thing, and you know, it's another example of wherever men are, that this problem will persist, and even more so under situations of extreme distress. So it's a big problem in the camps.
먼저 좋은 질문 감사합니다. 사실 로힝야 여성들의 상황을 생각하면 얼마나 끔찍할까요? 미얀마에서 이런 젠더 기반 폭력을 피해서 왔는데 이 온 수용소, 난민 수용소에서도 똑같은 이 문제가 발생하고 있는 상황인 것이죠. 남성이 있는 곳이면 어디든지 일어날 수 있는 문제이기도 하고요.
The big solution to this is, of course, decongesting the camp, making opportunities available for everyone, so there's less stress in the camps, that's for sure. Education to men is really important. Education for women who encounter this is really important so that they can access services when it happens. And then, you know, in our own facilities, we have a huge program that looks at the medical consequences for sexual gender-based violence victims, but also the psychological consequences as well. And privacy, as you said, is important. So when people come to our clinics, they're handed a special card which has sometimes a picture of a flower on it or a picture of a butterfly, and all the staff know that this person requires some kind of care. So they don't have to wait in the waiting room, they don't have to be exposed to other people, other members of the community. They're quietly ushered around, and that really made me quite proud when I visited the hospital to see that system put in place.
네, 그를 돕기 위해서는 이제 과밀 문제를 좀 해결을 해야 될 것 같고 이들에게 또 기회를 주면서 뭔가 쌓여 있는 불만들을 해결하는 것도 필요할 것 같습니다. 또 남성들 대상으로도 교육이 당연히 필요하고요. 여성들에게도 교육을 해서 혹시라도 이런 일이 일어났을 때 어떻게 해야 되는지를 알 수 있도록 하는 것이 중요합니다. 국경 없는 의사회는 지금 의료적으로도 또 심리적으로도 그 이후에 발생할 수 있는 것들을 고려해서 서비스를 제공을 하고 있고요. 또 프라이버시 굉장히 중요하기 때문에 이런 환자들이 왔을 때 그 특별히 카드에 뭐 꽃이 그려져 있을 수도 있고요. 나비가 그려질 수도 있습니다. 그럼 그 직원들이 그걸 딱 보고 이분들이 모든 사람들이 대기한 대기룸이 아니라 조용히 다른 곳으로 모셔갑니다. 저는 그 병원에 가서 이러한 시스템 보고 너무 자랑스러웠습니다.
네, 또 다음 질문 받아보겠습니다. 네, 앞쪽에 좀 부탁드릴게요.
First of all, thanks for MSF for joining this talking, and I have just a question for this conflict. I've seen many conflicts about in Gaza, Palestine, Israel problem, but it is first time for seeing Rohingya refugees. So, current situation of the Gaza is not a temporary, but that this is a very long-term problem of that. But Rohingya situation, I think, it is not a temporary situation. So it must be it doesn't sorry it doesn't meant to mandatory situation. So in MSF, they are aiding some aidings and some programs doing, but that is a temporary thing. So I want to ask, well, what is the long-term aid for them that the government doesn't support? If the government doesn't support them.
네, 지금 가자 지구에서 팔레스타인 그러니까 이스라엘 간의 그 분쟁 관련해선 이야기를 많이 봤는데 로힝야 난민 이슈는 제가 사실 처음 오늘 들었습니다. 이제 이 이슈가 사실 단기 문제죠. 그래서 제가 아까 단기적인 문제가 아니기 때문에 여쭤보는 건데요. 만약에 이런 지금 MSF나 지금 여러 기관들에서 지금 단기적으로 구호를 하고 있는데 정부가 계속적으로 개입을 하지 않을 경우에 그럼 장기적으로는 어떻게 할 수 있는지 그것에 대해서 여쭤보겠습니다.
It's a good question. I'm going to answer it in a different way. I'm going to ask everyone here for 30 seconds just to think about the answer to that question. So what was the question? It was the Rohingya people are facing huge humanitarian crisis. It's very difficult for them, and all they're getting is short-term immediate aid. And there are no long-term strategies that I've spoken about. I want everyone here to just take about 10-20 seconds to think about what your life would be like if you were one of those people.
네, 그러면은 이 답에 대해서 조금 다른 방식으로 한번 접근해서 답을 한번 찾아가 보겠습니다. 여기 계신 분들이 한 10초에서 20초 동안 한번 생각해 보셨으면 좋겠어요. 로힝야족이 지금 인도주의적인 위기를 겪고 있는데 이들에게는 지금 단기적인 구호만 지금 제공이 될 뿐입니다. 장기적인 어떤 전략에 대해서도 제가 아직 말씀을 드리지 못했죠. 우리가 그 로힝야족의 상황이라면 어떨까 한번 상상해 보셨으면 좋겠습니다.
네, 혹시 또 질문이 있으실까요?
It's okay. I was just asking people to reflect on what that would mean because that's the situation that they're in right now. There is nothing on the table for those people. There is no long-term solutions that the government is giving, no long-term solutions that the Rohingya have themselves, other than what they're asking for, which is please let us return back to Myanmar. Let us live peacefully in our homeland. But that is not an option right now because there's civil war in that country.
네, 잠깐 생각해 보시라고 하긴 했던 건데요. 지금 그들의 상황을 생각하면 사실 장기적인 해결책이 지금 없습니다. 정부에게도 없고 로힝야족도 없습니다. 로힝야족이 원하는 그 미얀마로 귀환해서 평화롭게 살고 싶다는 것은 사실 미얀마에서도 지금 내전 중이기 때문에 쉽지 않습니다.
네, 또 질문이 있으실까요? 제가 준비한 질문들의 여러 부분들을 여러분께서 질문을 해주셔가지고 조금 전에 이제 여쭤보셨던 그 장기적인 해결책도 제가 여쭤보고 싶었던 질문이었었어요. 그러면 여러분께서 좀 다른 질문이 있으실지도 저기 계시네요.
네, 안녕하세요. 저는 이제 고등학생이고 동시에 웹소설 작가로 활동하고 있는 사람인데요. 그래서 두 번째 영상에 나왔던 이야기꾼에 대한 얘기를 굉장히 감명 깊게 보았습니다. 국경 없는 의사회는 말 그대로 의료적으로 사람들을 지원하는 단체이기도 하지만 이야기꾼 영상을 보고 좀 더 문화예술적으로도 사람들에게 정신적인 그런 지원을 해주는 단체라는 거를 또 깨닫기도 했고요. 그래서 의료적인 시스템이나 뭐 법률적으로 그들을 지원할 수 있는 방법 외에 문화예술적인 방향에서 그들의 문화를 보존하고 그런 방향으로 도울 수 있는 방법이 한국인인 저에게 따로 있는지 그런 방법에 대해서 좀 묻고 싶습니다.
Yeah, there's plenty of ways. And you know, if you go on social media, on Instagram or on websites on Google, there's plenty of Rohingya people trying to showcase their culture, trying to showcase the cool foods that they have and the different art practices that they've got. And you know, that's something I think we can all connect with, right? Food and culture. And that's not going to solve their problem. That's not going to solve their plight, but it is an important step for them to be seen, for connections to be made. And all you have to do is just send them a message to say, thank you. I see this. Share something of your own culture. I think this is how we can make bridges towards this community. And I know you might feel helpless, but donating money to organizations is definitely a good step. But there is another step of connecting with people that I think is important, and we can all do it, I think.
사실 방법은 많은 것 같습니다. 뭐 인스타나 구글이나 소셜미디어 찾아보면요, 로힝야족들이 자기들의 문화, 자기들의 음식, 자기들의 어떤 예술에 대해서 나누고 있는 그런 계정들이 굉장히 많이 있습니다. 그거를 한번 찾아보셨으면 좋겠어요. 우리가 공감할 수 있는 음식 문화들이잖아요. 물론 그것을 통해서 그들의 그런 고난을 바로 해결해 줄 수는 없겠지만 그 사람들과는 우리가 연결되고 공감할 수 있습니다. 단순해요. 그분들께 그것을 보고 너무 감명받았다 하면서 또 우리의 문화를 얘기할 수도 있고 또 여러분들의 그 작품을 또 소개해 주실 수도 있고요. 그러면서 그런 다리가 좀 지어질 것 같습니다. 어떤 물질적인 것으로 후원하는 것도 물론 중요하지만 그곳에 있는 그런 고통받는 사람들과 연결되는 것도 중요합니다. 그리고 그것은 사실 우리 모두가 할 수 있는 것이기도 하고요.
If you thought gochujang was spicy, wait till you try Rohingya food. It's
네, 로힝야 음식 꽤 맵거든요. 그러니까 한국 음식 맵다고 생각하신다면 그 음식 한번 드셔보셨으면 좋겠습니다.
네, 저희 그 온라인으로 지금 참여하고 계신 분들이 많이 계신데요. 온라인에 질문을 남겨주신 분의 질문부터 한번 답변을 들어볼게요. 아룬님께서 20여 년간 인도적 지원 활동을 지금 계속해 오고 계시다고 말씀을 해주셨는데, 이렇게 헌신을 할 수 있게 하는 그 동기가 무엇인지 궁금합니다라고 남겨주셨어요.
Yeah, good question. And yeah, I guess my background, I grew up during the Sri Lankan Civil War, similar to, you know, many Korean people as well who grew up knowing about war, who grew up knowing about discrimination, about poverty, about injustices. And I thought to myself, when that war finished, I thought I never wanted another war to go unseen. Wars will happen. It's apparently our human nature for it to happen. I don't know any other way, but I definitely wanted to make sure that people who went through war had some services, who were able to be seen by and not forgotten by other people.
네, 제가 사실 저 스스로도 내전을 경험했고 가난을 경험했고 또 불의를 경험했습니다. 이런 일들이 다시 일어나지 않기를 바랬고요. 이것을 경험한 사람들이 일어났던 것들이 잊혀지지 않도록 하는 것이 중요한 것 같습니다.
But it's not a special feeling. I want to make that very clear. Like the question that you asked before, the questions that were asked before, that's the starting point. It's just one step above that. That feeling of, oh, I care about these people. I would like to do something to help. That's the same feeling that I have. It's not a special thing. It's just probably just one more step ahead. That's all.
오케이. 어떤 특별한 어떤 감동을 받아서 제가 그게 동기부여돼서 지금까지 이렇게 달려온 건 아니고요. 정말 단순한 그 사소한 감정 때문에 제가 이걸 계속 할 수 있었던 것 같아요. 지금 이제 여러분들께서 이걸 보시고 나서 아, 나도 뭔가 하고 싶다. 이들을 위해서 뭔가 하고 싶다. 그 느낀 그 사소한 그 감정이 제가 그 한 발음 더 나가게 해준 것 같습니다.
네, 저희 온라인으로 참여해 주시는 분들께서 남겨주신 그 질문에 다 답변해 주지 못하는 점 미리 양해 말씀을 구하겠습니다. 혹시 현장에 참여하신 분 중에 또 질문이 있으실까요? 그러면 이제 여러분께서 질문이 있으시면 또 저에게 말씀을 해주시고 그 사이에 막간을 이용해서 제가 좀 질문을 해보려고 합니다. 첫 번째 제가 궁금했던 게 저희 다큐멘터리에서도 그 로힝야 난민이 말레이시아나 이제 인근 국가로 오히려 이제 피난처를 찾아서 애초에 처음에는 미얀마에서 탄압을 피해서 이제 로힝야 캠프 콕스바자르 캠프까지 찾아오게 된 건데 또 캠프 상황 속에서도 너무 열악하다 보니까 이제 그 캠프를 떠나서 바다로 이제 나아가는 그 소년 소녀들의 모습이 좀 그려졌었는데요. 저희가 한국에서 이제 유럽의 그 지중해에서 유럽을 찾아서 오는 그 아프리카 난민들의 소식을 많이 듣는데 이 로힝야 난민들의 그 소식은 많이 접하지 못하고 있는 것 같아요. 혹시 이들이 이주를 피난처를 찾아서 로힝야 캠프를 떠나서 이제 다른 피난처를 찾는 난민들에게는 어떤 미래가 기다리고 있는 건지 어떻게 살아가고 있는지 궁금합니다.
Yeah, and so if we think about 1.2 million people trapped in a refugee camp, who the government does not want them to leave because yes, if they left that camp, they will also make very dangerous sea journeys to different countries, and countries like Australia, countries like Indonesia, and a lot of Asian countries want to avoid what happened in 2016, which was the Andaman Sea crisis.
네, 120만 명의 그 로힝야족이 지금 난민 수용소에서 수용되어 있는데요. 사실 이 정부 당국에서도 이들이 그 위험한 항해로 떠나지 않게 하고자 더 수용하는 것도 있습니다. 그러니까 일부 로힝야족이 호주나 인도네시아나 다른 아시아 국가로 이제 탈출하는 그 항해가 굉장히 위험하기 때문인데요. 정부 당국이 2016년에 있었던 앤더만 해의 그 위기 아니 비극을 막고자 하는 것도 있습니다.
This was when a few thousand Rohingya were trying to flee via boat, and they were stuck because I think either engine failure or something happened, and no country wanted to help them at all. So they were stuck in the middle of the ocean, and it caused a huge crisis because whose responsibility was this? Was this ASEAN countries' responsibilities? Was it Australia's responsibility as one of the wealthiest countries in that area?
그 당시에 2016년 당시에 수천 명의 로힝야족이 배를 타고 떠났습니다. 근데 바다 한가운데서 엔진이 망가진 겁니다. 그런데 그 어떤 국가도 도움의 손길을 주지 않았어요. 큰 위기였죠. 누구의 책임이었을까요? 아시아 국가의 책임이었을까요? 그 아시아 국가 중에서 가장 잘 사는 호주가 책임을 져야 되는 거였을까요?
Everyone viewed them as a security problem. You would have seen how much mistrust, negative attitudes there are towards refugees. Even in my own country, in Australia, we put up so many very harsh regulations and restrictions to ensure people don't come via boat. And I think this is the basic problem here, is that we're looking at the Rohingya as a security problem rather than a humanitarian problem.
모든 국가들이 이 로힝야족 이슈를 안보 이슈로 바라봤습니다. 그것은 사실 난민에 대한 불신이 팽배하기 때문에 그런데요. 호주도 마찬가지입니다. 난민들이 배를 타고 오는 것을 막기 위해서 엄청나게 엄격한 규제들을 세워놓고 있습니다. 로힝야족을 인도주의 위기가 아니라 안보 위기로 보는 거죠.
So all these countries put a lot of money to ensure that humanitarian aid is being well done in the camps, so they don't have to focus on people fleeing. So they try to make the services really good in Bangladesh so that people don't have an excuse to leave. And if they leave, they get penalized. And so this is the trap of the situation the Rohingya are in right now.
지금 모든 국가들이 엄청나게 후원을 만약에 그 난민 캠프에 한다는 것은 그 로힝야족이 그 수용소 내의 환경에 그래도 그나마 만족해서 떠날 생각을 하지 못하게 하기 위해서 그런 겁니다. 혹시라도 수용소를 떠난다면 처벌을 하는 것이죠.
네, 제가 갖고 있는 그 다음 질문도 한번 이어서 해보겠습니다. 국경없는 의사회 활동에 대해서 좀 궁금한데요. 캠프 간에도 이동에 제약이 있다라고 제가 들었어요. 그래서 캠프 간의 이동도 쉽지 않고 그 캠프 내에서의 치안도 좋지 않고 이런 상황 속에서 그 의료 물품은 충분한지 그리고 몇 개의 병원이 운영되고 있고 몇 명의 구호 활동가들이 활동을 하고 있는지 이제 캠프가 막혀 있고 이제 오가지 못하는 상황 속에서 좀 가자 상황처럼 좀 인도주의 물품들이 반입이 잘 되고 있는지 궁금합니다.
Good question. So yes, there's restrictions. So about 2-3 years ago, because of the violence that was happening in the camp, the government said no one can move to another. There's one big mega camp, but within that there's 36 smaller camps, and each person was not able to travel there. They also banned tuk-tuks. You know tuk-tuks, the cars. They banned those moving in the camp, so people had to walk distances, even if they had medical issues. Ambulances weren't allowed to go into the camp to pick them up. So, for people who are already struggling, to remove this basic need of transportation and to ask people to, go and get permission if they had to move to a camp while they're maybe suffering from a life-threatening injury, disease, it's a joke, really, huh?
네, 그 2-3년 전에 그 제안을 이제 정부에서 한 이유가 그때 폭력 사태가 수용소에서 일어났습니다. 그 로힝야 캠프가 보면 그 중앙에 아주 커다란 그 메가 캠프가 있고 그 주변에 36개 작은 수용소 시설들이 있는데요. 그 캠프 간의 이동을 금지한 겁니다. 투툭스라고 이렇게 조그만 교통수단이 있는데요. 그것도 금지를 시켰습니다. 구급차도 들어가지 못하게 되어서 아프면 걸어서 병원에 가야 되는 상황이 되었습니다. 교통수단은 이제 사라진 거고요. 그리고 아파서 정말 죽을 병에 걸려서 병원을 가야 하더라도 허가를 받아야지만 움직일 수 있는, 이동할 수 있는 상황이 되었죠. 정말 말도 안 되는 농담과 같은 상황이 되어버린 겁니다.
There's plenty of aid getting in. It's very different to Gaza, where there's big restrictions on aid. There's a lot of aid going through. The Bangladeshi government wants more and more to come through because, again, this is all the institutions have to be delivered by, all the services have to be delivered by NGOs. They aren't allowed to work, they aren't allowed to have an education, so they are dependent on humanitarian aid. So yeah, it's different from Gaza. But the point is that NGOs and the United Nations can't sustain all the services for 1.2 million people for 7 years now. And so the point here is not about is aid getting through, is that system is not right. That system doesn't work because, yeah, in the beginning, amazing, we were providing millions of liters of water a year to the camps. That's really great. But then, as things change, they had to put restrictions on the water usage. So now some camps, people could only access water twice a day, daily. There's no conflict going on, there's no war going on, but the situation and the conditions are like as if they've got conflict and war going on because they're dependent on aid.
지금 가자의 환경과는 좀 다릅니다. 구호 물품이 가자 지구는 아예 들어가지 못한다면 여기는 꽤 자유롭게 들어가고 있고요. 방글라데시 정부도 그 구호를 계속 원하고 있습니다. 그런데 이 모든 서비스를 NGO가 다 감당하고 전달을 해야 됩니다. 왜냐하면 로힝야족은 지금 교육도 받을 수 없고 일도 못하게 되어 있잖아요. 그러니까 전적으로 구호의 의지를 해야 되다 보니까 모든 생활의 방면들을 NGO에 의지해서 진행이 되는 거죠. 그런데 지금 120만 명을 NGO들이 7년이나 지금 지원을 하고 있는데요. 이게 구호로 계속 유지되기에는 불가능합니다. 시스템이 제대로 구축되지 않은 거라고 봅니다. 처음에는 좋았죠. 1년에 100만 리터의 물이 수용소에 들어왔기 때문에 부족하지 않았어요. 하지만 상황이 그 7년간에 계속 변하다 보니까 제한을 두게 되죠. 그래서 일부 수용소에서는 하루에 2번밖에 물을 마실 수가 없습니다. 지금 가자지구와 달리 분쟁도 일어나지 않았고 전쟁 상황도 아닌데도 마치 전쟁과 같은 상황을 살고 있는 건 구호에 의존할 수밖에 없는 상황이기 때문에 그렇습니다.
네, 혹시 그 관객석에서 질문이 있으신 분이 계실까요? 여기 마이크 전달 좀 부탁드릴게요.
지금 이거 두 번째 다큐 영상을 보고 나서 지금 이제 또 여러분들이 질문도 많이 해주시고 들으면서 생각을 했는데 7년 동안 NGO 단체에만 의존해서 지금 살고 있잖아요. 문제도 많이 발생되고 있고 그렇다면 저기가 지금 난민 캠프이긴 하지만 저기서 지금 국가의 형태까지는 아니더라도 자치 지역의 형태를 띨 수 있는 약간 지도를 저 분들을 지도할 수 있는 리더 그룹이 거의 없나 궁금합니다. NGO 단체에만 전적으로 의존하기에는 너무 긴 시간이 흐르고 있고 또 그 지역 안에 밀도도 굉장히 높은 상태라 어느 정도 수준의 그런 운영이 돼야 되잖아요. 그런 분들이 꽤 많이 계신지 알고 싶습니다.
Oh, brilliant. I mean, brilliant suggestion, brilliant question. The fact is that the leaders, if anyone rises up to leadership positions, they're quickly put down because they don't want the Rohingya to rise up. And can you imagine 1.2 million people rising up in the camps? It would be a big security issue to handle. So right now, the situation is to keep them in a limbo, to keep them in a temporary state. So your suggestion would be great if the conditions were right for that, but the restrictions placed on them doesn't allow that to happen.
지금 사실 말씀해 주신 게 너무 좋은 아이디어고 좋은 질문이신데요. 근데 그곳에서는 누군가가 리더십을 보여줘서 이렇게 일어선다면 바로 그 싹을 잘라버립니다. 왜냐하면 그 두려움이 있기 때문에 그러죠. 120만 명이 뭔가 동기가 돼서 동요된다면 그건 안보 이슈가 될 수도 있기 때문에 제한이 많이 걸려 있고요. 임시 상태를 지금 유지하는 것이 정책입니다.
And that's why you see the violence, right? Because some groups are trying to get up, some groups are not trying to get up, and you're seeing contestation between the two. And yeah, it's if the situation was right for that kind of political leadership to come up, but it isn't. Yeah.
네, 그래서 그런 정치적 어떤 리더십을 보여줄 수 있는 리더들이 일어날 수 있다면 참 좋겠지만 지금 그렇지 못한 상황입니다. 아무래도 어떤 그룹은 이렇게 뭔가 해보자. 또 어떤 그룹은 그런 거 하지 말자. 이런 그룹 간의 간극 때문에 폭력 사태도 계속 일어나고 있습니다.
But I want to reiterate. There's not much time left, but I want to say that the solutions to this, it's not complicated, really. There's 3 solutions that governments and everyone can do. One is that they safely go back voluntarily in a dignified way back to their home country. If that's not possible, then they are resettled in the countries right now where they are refugees or that they're integrated into the countries that they are living in right now. Or the third one is that there's a big resettlement program for them. So these are the 3 solutions that the Rohingya have. That it's not complicated, it's really clear. It's just that the pathway to them requires a lot of political change, requires a lot of change in perception of the Muslim refugees, requires a lot of connection with the people so that people don't just look at them as a problem for Myanmar, but as a regional problem or a regional opportunity, even not a problem, a regional opportunity.
네. 그 사실 솔루션은 복잡하지 않습니다. 정부와 우리 모두가 할 수 있는 건데요. 첫 번째는 이들이 안전하게 또 존엄성을 지키는 방식으로 귀환할 수 있도록 하는 거죠. 그것이 어렵다면 두 번째, 난민 지금 정착해서 살고 있는 그곳에서 재정착할 수 있도록 지원을 하는 거고, 또 세 번째는 그 대규모 재정착 그 프로그램들이 사실 있습니다. 그것을 활용하는 건데요. 이게 어떻게 보면 단순하지만 정치인들의 의지도 필요하고요. 우리가 무슬림에 대한 어떤 편견, 두려움, 이러한 인식도 바꿔야 합니다. 또 이게 미얀마의 문제라고 생각하는 인식도 바뀌어야 되고요. 이게 영내, 우리의 문제라고 생각을 하게 돼야 되고요. 이거를 또 어떻게 보면 문제라고 보지 않고 기회라고 보는 인식의 전환도 필요합니다.
네, 저희 오늘 그 주말임에도 불구하고 많이들 직접 참여해 주셔서 감사합니다. 마지막으로 저희 온라인으로 시청하고 계신 참여자분들도 계시고 직접 먼 길 오신 분들도 계신데 한국 오디언스 분들께 좀 남겨주고 싶은 말씀이 있으시다면 한마디 부탁드릴게요.
Thank you so much for your interest. It takes a lot of courage, I think, to come and to learn about something new, but that is the first step, and I wish you well on your second step, your third step, and your 100th step as you learn more about the Rohingya people, as you learn more about the work MSF does. So just keep that humanitarian spirit in mind. Though maybe this community does not live, there's not many of them in Korea, they're your neighbors, they're our neighbors. So I just want to say thank you. I can feel the generous spirit of the Korean community just in my short 1 week of being here, and I really hope and I wish you all the best. So thank you for attending.
네, 오늘 관심 가져주셔서 진심으로 감사합니다. 사실 새로운 것을 알아가기 위해서 이렇게 이런 자리를 찾아오시는 건 굉장히 큰 용기가 필요하셨을 텐데요. 정말 첫 발걸음 잘 뛰셨습니다. 두 번째, 세 번째, 그리고 그 100번째 발걸음 계속 이어나가셨으면 좋겠고요. 그런 인도주의 마음을 간직하셨으면 좋겠습니다. 한국에서 이러한 지역들이 멀리 떨어져 있지만 이분들은 여러분들의 이웃이라는 것 꼭 기억해 주셨으면 좋겠고요. 제가 한국에 와서 지금 일주일 정도 머물었는데 한국인분들의 정말 따뜻한 마음을 잘 느끼고 갑니다. 감사합니다.
And I also want to thank Amy as well, who's got the hardest job in this room, I think. So.
예, thank you.
네, 아르님께서 말씀하신 것처럼 저희 그 7년째 이어지고 있는 로힝야 위기가 120만 명의 로힝야 난민들이 지금 캠프 속에서 오도 가도 못하는 상황 속에서 살아가고 있습니다. 여러분께서 그 집으로 돌아가셔서 친구분들과 로힝야 난민에 대해서 좀 이야기도 많이 해보시고 앞으로도 국경없는 의사회 활동에 대해서 조금 더 관심을 가져주시고 응원해 주셨으면 좋겠습니다. 오늘 주말인데도 귀한 발걸음 해주셔서 정말 감사합니다. 나가시는 길에 저희 그 만족도 조사에 참여해 주시면 저희가 준비한 특별한 굿즈 드리고 있으니까요. 꼭 참여 부탁드리고 저희 국경없는 의사회에서 보다 더 좋은 행사로 찾아뵐 수 있도록 많은 관심과 응원 부탁드리겠습니다. 감사합니다.